So hello again, everybody. We will continue with a community exchange session, what we call. So we are going to interact directly. The chairperson facilitator of this active audience participation session is Dr. Arthur Shelley from Australia. Thank you, Arthur, for being here today, independent lending facilitator in Intelligent Answers Australia, that he's also writing now a wonderful book that he will share with the rest of us and the rest of the world. And so as I said, that the messages, we will see how this session will go and how long we will keep it, as we know that remote is very tiring. And we need you throughout the workshop day, as we have two other workshops later on. Arthur, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Margarita, and good afternoon. Although we should probably say good morning, good afternoon, and good night, right? Right where I am, it's 20 past 8 p.m. It's almost 1:30 for you, and your lunchtime. And this is really a conversation about interaction. So we should really interact, right? As much as is possible. So I'll just set the context and highlight what the questions were for the session. So I'll just share my screen and pop those up for you so that you have them. What we're really talking about is how do we promote sharing and interaction amongst our colleagues, whether they be students, whether they be participants. So as researchers, we share, as learners, we share. But how do you do it? I'd be very happy to share some examples of what I do, but let's just open the floor. Who would like to give an example of how they communicate or share or facilitate that interaction in your own environment? Who's got an example that they would like to share? I don't know whether anyone's speaking. Dr. Fontini, yes? You're muted.
I'm muted. I'm unmuted now. Sorry.
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this session, and thank you for the opportunity to share an example. I will go back to last year with an example during the pandemic, where during lockdown, where it was full lockdown in the UK, and where students were isolated as we were all in our houses and doing everything virtually. And so during the course that I teach, which is a teacher education course, we do many projects where we, under normal circumstances where students are in campus, we allow them to share resources, collaborate, create new resources together, so that then they take those resources into schools, into their teaching. And so I was thinking, how can we keep this going during this time and help the students collaborate? So I found myself reading some books and some research, and I found this concept called pragmatic imagination. I don't know if you have ever heard of this, which mainly started from architecture as a kind of concept, and then moved on to different disciplines. So pragmatic imagination actually shows that everybody is capable of creativity. And that creativity is nurtured when you are with others together. So based on that concept, I managed to make sure our students get on with the film project that they had to do at the time, And instead of doing it in schools, where they were used to doing it under normal circumstances, they did it amongst themselves. So they created beautiful videos from wherever they were in the world, because some of them went back to their home in Europe and mainly in Europe at that time. And they actually created the most beautiful pedagogic videos that you could use in the classroom with your students, even though it was very hard to conceptualize that this could actually happen under those circumstances. So thank you. And I just wanted to open up the floor with this example.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you give us an example of an outcome? You said they recorded videos. Did they interact around each other's videos, or did they just operate focusing on their own?
That's a really good question. So there were two levels of that. I put them in groups per language, because we have the opportunity to have French, German, Italian, Spanish, Mandarin. So that was one of the criteria, that they could work together as a group of 3 to exchange ideas and create a pedagogic video based on a theme that they would teach in the classroom, in a language classroom in that case. And they all had to collaborate and see it from the different perspectives, and then come up with a common video, no more than 3 minutes. And so there were amazing results, in the sense that somebody was in France at the time. So they actually went outside and took videos of the place where they were living. Somebody was in full quarantine and showed us around her house and her kids, and doing things in everyday life that were useful linguistically to share. And so everything then was edited with music, with a narrative around it. And then there was a second level of sharing. We had a Google document where we have 100 students on that particular course. And so everybody posted their videos online. And then we also shared the link with all our partnership schools, who are, at that time, there were 120. So you can imagine that the scale of access to this interactive outcome.
Very good. And that encouragement of the socialization around the artifacts, I think, is really important. That's where a lot of the creativity and learning and inspiration for the learners comes from. If they just write an assignment on their own as an individual, groups are better, and you've done that. But then groups with socialization around the collective outputs, that's really powerful. And I do similar things in my work as well. Excellent. Thank you, Fatini. Has somebody else got another example of how they're encouraging collaboration, interaction between people? Jürgen, and you're muted at the moment, so.
Yeah, hello, Arthur. It's so great to see you and everybody else. I had transformed myself into a teaching robot over the last 3 days. So I was teaching Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and also this morning and this afternoon. So that's why I look a little bit tired. It's not because of your interesting topic. So I don't think I do anything very special. I use Blackboard Collaborate, but I've also been trying to do some new things, and the purpose is indeed to foster interaction, communication, and exchange. So I'm using Google Docs for group formation, and I'm using the Blackboard Collaborate whiteboard for brainstorming. I found that quite useful because to give some context, I'm in Singapore, as many of you know, of course, and we still don't have face-to-face. So everything is still online because the Delta variant has recently reared its ugly face. And as a result, yeah, we are basically being very careful with meeting in person. And one new thing that I have actually tried, apart from trying to use technology in its most interactive way, is I've used Stephen Brookfield's critical incident questionnaire. So this is one of these things where you ask 5 questions, and I think the first one is what was the most engaging that happened? What was the most, when were you the most distanced? What was the most helpful? Questions like that. And I've been asking them after every session, and then the students have responded. And then I actually created a little PowerPoint, 5 slides, which I show in the beginning of the next session. And then I tell them, oh, these were actually the results. And I found that very useful because I've never gotten so much feedback on individual sessions. I mean, I normally get end of session feedback, but that's only after 24 hours and when the whole module is over, and that's kind of a little bit later in the game. So I thought it was quite interesting. I should probably also ask the students, I mean, now that the classes are almost over, whether they found that critical incident questionnaire actually useful. So yeah, that's just a little bit from me, and I'm delighted to be here. And thanks, Margarita and Fotini, for organizing that.
Terrific, thanks, Jürgen. The pieces in there, I'm sure, would be extremely useful. You talked about, asking the participants, the learners, whether they found it useful. I think you can normally tell that from the quality of the content that you get back. So if you're getting a lot of responses, like the students get completely surveyed out, right? And you do the course experience surveys and the teaching scores, and you ask for that. But I find putting in a peer review along the kind of thing that you did to be extremely valuable as well. That process of getting the feedback, you get some really rich feedback because it's talking one-to-one, and they know that it's being looked at, and it makes a huge difference. We could talk about that for a long time, but there were 2 people that have put their hands up. Bigum, you put your hand up first, I think, and then Evangelos after that. So let's go to those 2, and then we'll see anyone else that put up the hand up in the meantime. Over to you, Bigum.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, the committee, Dr. Margarita, and the amazing team for this event. Also, thank you very much for this presentation. Actually, although I'm not working at the moment, I can say that I was participating in some conferences, and at the beginning of this year, I attended a conference, and I saw that the conference organizers also use WhatsApp as a tool to have better communication and interaction, because they created WhatsApp group for each different panel, and the scholars, the presenters were communicating with each other about their papers. And also, I think there was another event, and I am still in one of these groups. Sometimes they make call for papers announcements or other job openings, maybe through WhatsApp groups. So I think that it's one of the maybe efficient ways to exchange information or news. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bigum, and I apologize if I don't pronounce anyone's names correctly. Australia is such
fine, thanks.
Australia is such a culturally young country, and we don't have too many languages spoken here, at least not in an official way, although we're mainly a country of immigrants, plus, of course, our original indigenous. But so that's why I'm apologizing for that in advance. Just one comment on yours before we go to Evangelos. there are so many amazing tools out there now to facilitate both virtually and face to face. And the social media tools are very powerful. I had a successful PhD student use WhatsApp in Thailand, where she got her students to co-create content rather than to teach them content. So by asking them a series of questions, they had to then go and use WhatsApp and gather data and share the data amongst themselves. It's quite an interesting thesis, looking at using social media as a form of pedagogy, a co-creative pedagogy. That's something I might share with you sometime, Margarita and Fatini. There's probably some interesting work there to be more widely shared. Evangelos, you had your hand up.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about media or the pandemic. Am I okay or out of context?
No. We're talking about, sharing ideas and communicating ways to enable people to interact with each other in a collaborative manner, whether that be virtual or face-to-face, and how that enhances learning.
Well, when I was teaching in Oman, Muscat Sultan Qaboos University, I introduced first inquiry-based learning, with most successful version of it, project-based learning. And then through ideas that I got from the work of Little John, a colleague, I introduced syllabus negotiation, which was really more or less revolutionary for my students, because they were used to a very rigid approach where they are given every minute detail and so forth. So I found that syllabus negotiation, the way I designed and implemented it, really brought about an explosion of interaction among my students. We would start with the focus group discussion, and then different students could propose projects for the project-based learning. And then those who wanted would get up and support, their proposal. Why a project on Oman after oil would be important. Okay, and then there would be a vote. So in one case, in just a 2-hour session, I had 35 proposals by the students, and then all the interaction among them in support or attack, the different ideas and so on. So it was an extremely interactive kind of approach. Sometimes it didn't work. At the end of a 2-hour session with all these presentations, support, voting and all that, a student comes up to me and says, "Sir, aren't you going to give us the syllabus?"
No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Evangelos. We have a lot of things in common. Lewis Caleb, I'll come to you next. I'll just give a little comment back on this particular comment. One of the things, I wrote an article a couple of years ago called Applied Social Learning Ecosystems, actually in Jürgen's journal. So you can find it there from 2018, I think, but Jürgen may correct me on that. But the project-based learning is really powerful because they're not going out and using Google to find an answer that already exists. What they do is they have to create answers for things that don't yet exist. And that's a really important part of the inspirational learning that happens in that case. Anyone can just go and find something that exists, right? But it takes a special co-creative socialization capability to do it for something real. And when you add real clients on top of that, so if you actually had owners of those problems that the students were working on, that becomes really, really powerful. And so if you can bring industry owners of problems in and ask the students to work on them in that project-based way, that's really, really powerful and works very well. So I'll go to Lewis. Caleb, you've dropped off my screen at the moment, but you had your hand up.
Yeah. Just to add something when it comes to interaction. So I come from the younger generation based from this panel, and I think as the youngest of this panel, we are more, let's say, software aware, or let's say technical aware. So we are more interested on using new technology in order to keep the process on learning going. So during the whole year, personally, I teach online during the whole year on my classes, and it was interesting to see how students were into the class when you had time to prepare your classes. Let me explain on that. So from the technical perspective, to get a better, let's say, setup, get a better gear, like a camera, like a microphone, I don't like a better computer, to be able to learn how to teach via another type of platform. I see something about Discord, which is one of the options, or maybe other option available in order to keep bringing this flame on student, on the ability to learn. And us from the younger generation, we are more interested on technical expertise and technical aspect, like you know, having a better setup and stuff. If I show you, for example, my setup now, you just be amazed, because this is basically the thing we have learned from the student. In order to have a better interaction, you need to have a better quality of the classes. But this is the perspective from the younger generation. I had the ability also to cooperate with my peers, my older peers, and I also understand it is really difficult for them to switch from these, you know, physical face-to-face interaction classes up to these virtual faces, because they are not used to. One of the many examples for is how to turn off the microphone, or how to, for example, raise your hand based from the Zoom platform. These are the little things that matter from this generation, but that is also difficult for them to handle. And I do understand, because a lot of my peers are older than me. It is important to help them. Me as a younger, I can bring my technical expertise. That's what I actually did for this conference, to my older people, in order for them to be able to give more interaction to these classes. So my answer on that is basically from the younger generation to be able to emphasize this new technology, new ways to teach, be more deeper into the Zoom application or other application, for example, that have been available for the teaching aspect.
Yeah, excellent insights. Thanks, Lewis. Caleb. I think Fatini, I'll come to you in a moment. I'll just respond to Lewis. There's a number of things in there that I think are really important that you're making. One is establishing the expectation and the new way of learning. I've found that with students that I interact with, both face-to-face and online. So, for example, built into the assessment is a peer review where they comment on each other and their contributions that are made to the classes. And part of that contribution is that rather than do lectures each week, I don't do any lectures at all, but we have interactive sessions. Everything is an interactive session. We put material, all of the material is available before the semester starts. They're expected to review that. And then each week we talk about one of the topics, but their contribution is they're expected to make at least 2 posts, one about what they thought of the material. And this is before we have the interaction session. They look at the material, They then interact online using, in this particular case, an internal discussion forum in Canvas. But you could use WhatsApp, you could use Google Docs, you could use any of the shared documents. But not only make a post of what they thought of the material, they then have to respond to at least one other post made by another learner. So, and if they don't do that, they lose marks. But far more importantly than losing marks is they don't get that social interactive experience. So it's encouraging them to, it'd be like children and broccoli, right? If they eat their broccoli, they're healthy, but you know, they don't know until they start to do it that it's actually good for them. But at the beginning, they complain. At the end of the semester, they just absolutely love it. And they're all firing off each other, and it stimulates all sorts of wonderful conversations. It's a really nice thing to watch. So the asking them to make a post and then to reply to another post really increases that interaction, and making it part of the grading, because if you don't, of course, they don't pay much attention to it and think, oh, well, I'm not going to lose marks if I don't do it. So it's a stick and a carrot. Very good. Fatini, I think you had your hand up before.
Yes, thank you. It was also in response to Louis' point on new technologies in teaching and learning. I just have, maybe just to put out a few ideas out there, it seems to be that there is a little bit of a divide between this new generation and old generation. I personally don't see it as an age gap. It's not to do with actually people who are old don't know how to use Zoom, for example, and people who are younger, by default, they will know how to use it. Possibly technically, yes, but then I'm thinking it's much more than that. It's about the concept you have about education. Having lived almost a year and a half online with my students, and I'm sure as a lot of us have, setting up a Zoom perfectly or setting up your things perfectly does not guarantee interaction. I don't think that you actually guaranteed interaction when you have everything geared up. It doesn't guarantee that you're a pedagogue. Pedagogy comes through education and through the teacher. We need to learn how to make sure we don't confuse these two. I don't think that having a perfect gear means that you're a great teacher or a great educator, or that your current interaction is what you do with it. That's the point. Such as all of these examples that we have shared so far and more is how do you facilitate that interaction taking place? And by no means trying to replicate the real thing, the face-to-face, but at least try and make sure that people also interact online and learn something from each other, which I think is really important to keep, because you could have a person talking at you for half an hour with no questions. There's no interaction.
Absolutely right.
So
it's about the questions. Lewis, Caleb, I'll come back to you. I think somebody else put their hand up as well, but I'm not seeing who it is on my screen at the moment. So, but just before we go to you, Lewis, Fatini, I explain quite explicitly at the beginning of each program that I run about this is not, sort of one teacher teaching 25 learners. It's actually 26 learners all learning from each other, and getting that mindset of we're all interacting, and anyone can ask a question, anyone can challenge, and the more perspectives you can bring into the conversation, the more powerful the learning happens. And quite often, sometimes it's the most naive question that really stimulates the best conversations, and you've got to be open for that. As a policy, one of the things that I do is, they've had their online discussion, they've looked at the material, they've asked each other some questions. The first thing that I did was ask a question. So what questions do you have? You know, rather than sort of to being tempted to go into, you know, a preach or a lecture, you know, you can engage with them. And that's really powerful. But going back to Louis Caleb's point before, there's an expectation. I think Evangelos also mentioned this. We've got to change the mindsets and the expectations of how this is going to happen. You know, what do we do differently? And, you know, we're a role model for them. And if we say one thing and do another, but if we open it up and enable others to participate, then it's really powerful. Louis Caleb, I think you had your hand up again. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah.
I'll try and find out who else had a hand up.
Yeah, you said it right. It's not. I mean, having the best setup is not mandatory. This is not my point. The point is more on the quality of the learning process. And you said something really interesting. It is about learning also from the student. You can teach a class of 70 students. I teach a class of 70 to 100 students, but it is also important to learn from them because I mean, they are more aware on this on the way the world is working now. I mean, because they are more like, let's say, a screen aware. They spend most of their time on TV, on their cell phones, on their tablet, and they are more. Yeah, I would like to say that they are more intelligent than us. This is my emphasis from the word speaking. But when it comes to learning, they are not just coming into a class and expecting something. They want to bring something into the class. And it's also important when you are teaching to open this possibility during the class from the student to give something you can learn from them. That's why I said it is important to also, but I understand from my generation, it's more common to emphasize the technical aspect because the students are more interested on this technical aspect. I also understand from my older generation, my older peers, that understanding this process will take much more time because if we had my supervisor, he has 50 years of experience on teaching, and even though he's learning how to use the Zoom application to do classes, there's some things he can't do because he doesn't have the time, for example, to learn that, and he needs to go to the most essential in order for the class to be learned. So something I tend to do with him is when you're at class, I can, for example, be a support for him. Like if we need, for example, to do, let's say, a poll, I will be available to create a poll, and I will be able to give the poll to the student so he can focus on the thing we just did this morning, like Evangelos focusing on the teaching aspect, me focusing on the technical aspect. I think this is taken from my culture and my personal experience. There's a need to connect both generation, like understanding as a young person that my older peer won't be able to focus on these things, and he has an order to understand that we as a younger generation, we had more expectation on how the class should be. So that's basically my whole point. There's no such thing as you need to have like a better camera and stuff. Not really.
Yeah.
Sorry, I propose that we take another question. I see George and
Yep.
then we stop to take a larger break because we have afterwards a 2.5-hour session, and it will be very tiring. So we can stop at about 2 o'clock and then start the other session. Thank you.
Sure, Margarita. Jürgen, just before I go to you, Louis, you're right about diversity. the more diversity, the better. It doesn't matter whether it's age, experiences, gender, the more points of view you can bring into the learning conversations, the better the quality of the outcomes. And it's not about finding the answer. It's about parallel universes exist, right? So there are many, many possibilities for each question. And when people realize that their particular answer is not the only one, then that's a really powerful learning for them. So let's go to Jürgen for the last question of the session, because we do need a bit of a break before the next couple of hours. And Margarita, thank you for your comment about empathy on the chat as well. I agree. The listening to people and being aware of what it is that they're saying, yeah, it's really important part. Sorry, Jürgen, over to you.
I just wanted to play a little bit the devil's advocate, because my experience is actually not necessarily that my students are better in learning and technology, in learning and teaching technology than me. My experience is actually more the other way around, that I'm quite a bit better than them. They may be very good, to use some of the examples in playing games with their phone, and to surf all kinds of internet sites and play some games. But when it comes to learning and teaching technology, I'm normally the one who tells them how to do things. And I think generally there is this danger, of getting very, very excited about new technology and regarding it as the holy grail. And, and then we think, oh, if we don't use this technology, then, we are no longer a good teacher and we are no longer reaching out to the students. There have been all these fallacies through the centuries and through the decades. For instance, 100 years ago, people thought that radio, will make a fantastic teacher. And there were actually schools in the US who replaced the teachers with radio, because radio was the thing. Yeah, it was so fantastic and so awesome, and it was new technology. And then, of course, came the TV, right? So TV became the replacement of the radio. So that was so fantastic. And then, of course, came the computers and the internet, and it was always, so much better than traditional teaching. So I think this is not really what matters. And our friend Louis said that also, right? So I'm not trying to argue against what you were saying, sir, but I'm just sharing my own perspective that to me technology is just a tool, it's just a means, and what matters are different things. What matters is actually the personal relationship, and it is whether the teacher cares or not, and then you can actually overcome a lot of issues that get into the way, of good teaching. I mean, like the physical distance. I think it's a big problem. I mean, because I really miss the personal contact with the students, and they also tell me that they miss it. Right, so it's not just a one-sided thing. There are, of course, always some people who say, actually, online is very good for me because I don't need to travel and so on. But yeah, I think technology is just a tool, it's just a means, and we should not get overly excited about technology. And I'm not a Luddite, for the record.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and as Margarita said on the chat, the collaboration of all factors, and I completely agree with that. Bringing them in, and Begum also made a comment about that learning ecosystems, combining not just a hierarchy, but a much greater connection between people, and that goes back to that. It's a andragogy approach rather than a pedagogy where, you're extracting the insights from a range of people and actually getting them to constructively argue from their points of view. There's a wonderful picture that just come up on the internet somewhere of a cylinder with two lights shining on. And from one side, it casts the shadow of a square, end on. From the other front, if going front on, it shows a shadow of a circle. So, and that's the way we are. We've all got a different perspective. If you're looking side on, you see the square. If you're looking front on, you see the circle, but you're both looking at a cylinder. Now, you could argue the difference between a square and a circle, or you could then investigate to see the more fullness of the whole object, and investigate it not just in flat dimensions, but from multiple dimensions. And the more points you add, the more you come to understand what the cylinder really is. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach them how to learn, because everything that you teach them based on known content today is actually going to date quite quickly. But if they know how to gather multiple perspectives quickly in unknown situations, as we're facing, pandemic is an excellent example of this. No one really knew, but we now know more than we knew before, and we've done it collectively on the fly as it's happened. But and now Delta comes along. We're still learning from the past, but we've got to adapt. So that constant adaptability is really important. Margarita, I know that you wanted to wrap up right now. It's 2 o'clock your time. That's fine by me. Thank you, everyone, for wonderful insights, for sharing. And this is a good example of getting people to interact online. No script, no particular sort of agenda, no known outcome, but there's some wonderful things being shared on this session tonight, or today for you. Back to you, Margarita. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful session, and what we discussed now privately a little bit with Luis is that Arthur was very well prepared for this, so this is amazing. So we can all contribute to the success of something. We need technology, we need people to be ready and to adapt and to be there when they should. So it's a collaboration. It's a collaboration, and like Peter said earlier, learn to face the uncertainty. So we live times that are unprecedented, but be there, be ready to collaborate, be there to share love, knowledge, and all the positive. So we will take a quite big break because who